It was bleak in the early 70s in London. No one had jobs. A lot of people were on strike. The trash men were on strike. There was trash bags everywhere. A lot of abandoned buildings. No one really had any money. It was perfect timing for us to come along. I knew that I wanted to be in music one way or another, but we did one little gig, me, Wally, Glenn and Cookie, at some cafe in King's Road in Chelsea, and it was a disaster. It was me singing. It was a complete disaster, and I just knew from then I ain't a singer, you know. So that's when we decided to audition for a singer, you know. And we put an ad in the local paper. But in that, and then John used to come in the shop, and that's when we auditioned him. We met at the Malcolm's shop on King's Road, and John showed up. It was me and Paul. I don't know if Glenn was there, and Malcolm. So we went round the pub, round the corner. We had a couple of pints. Everyone got bold, so we come back, and that's when we decided for John to sing along to the jukebox. And he sang along to the jukebox in an arrogant way, you know, just taking the piss. And I thought he wasn't being serious. I'm like, to hell with this guy, well, he ain't even trying. You know, but he was being who John was, you know. And it took me a few seconds. I thought he looked fantastic. But that's where it all started, if that was an audition. It's funny because we have a similar sense of humor in a certain way, me and John, but there's something that just makes me uncomfortable when I'm around him, you know? And I don't know what it is. Well, I do, but I don't want to say. It was the best time when we first started, before anyone knew us, you know, before egos get involved, before success gets involved. It's the purest of any bands at that period, you know, and we all liked it. I was getting laid every day by different girls, and we'd getting drunk, and it was fantastic. And I'd only been playing about a year before we actually started recording, never mind the Bollocks, Wessex Studios in Islington. That's where we did a lot of the recording, not all of it, but a lot of it. It was some of the best times recording. I enjoy recording more than I do playing live. Back then, I like creating a sound, and for me, it wasn't about just going in there and just going, okay, let's roll it. Oh, well, who cares what the drums sound like? Bang, bang, bang. Not at all. I'm always from, you know, I'm a Virgo. I don't know if you believe in stars. I don't know if I do or not, but it seems like a lot of Virgos are very, want to get it right. That's why we picked Chris Thomas to do the record. Me and Cookie were big fans of Roxy music, and he produced a couple of the early Roxy music albums. And he was fantastic, Chris Thomas and Bill Price, the engineer. They worked with us. I mean, I don't know what they thought of us when we were in the studio. They probably, you know, he just finished like Elton John's record or something, and I don't know what he thought. But they adapted to what we were doing and made it work. You know, when I first heard the finished version of the single "God Save the Queen," I knew it was great. You know, but I had no idea that it was all going to go on to, you know, still talking about it 40 years later. I don't know how anyone thinks that they hear something like, this is going to be a masterpiece. Space people are going to hear this album. You know what I mean? It's just, you don't think about it. I didn't anyway, you know, being 21, 22, when we did that, we was just having a laugh, you know, at that point, and we wasn't thinking of the future. I wasn't. No future. God Save the Queen should have been number one, without a doubt. Without a doubt, should have been number one. But the BBC and the powers that be just couldn't. Oh, and it was the Queen's Jubilee. So it was all about the Queen And the fact that we're number one, slagging off the Queen, it wasn't going to happen, you know. And, you know, all them people, the BBC, they're all related, you know, the higher end of people, that was not going to happen. Didn't matter, because we had fans who were willing it to happen, and it was the same with Nevermind the Bollocks. They just liked it. It's not like we were trying to buy an ad in a music paper to let people know about it. It had its own wheels. It was just rolling along. And I think a lot of kids loved it. That was like the main album to have if you were part of this new revolution, if you like, going on. You know, that was it. That was the spearhead. So it didn't matter what music press said about it, good or bad. And I don't really remember a lot of what the reviews were about the album. What I gather about the song Bodies was this girl, Pauline, who was a nut job, certified wacko, who brought her to one of our shows, brought her abortion in a bag. Charming. And I guess John knew her a little bit. I f***ed her around the back of the Marquee in Wardour Street. She was actually very hot, but obviously not quite all there. You know, I'm glad I found out the story afterwards about the abortion. But it was interesting. It's a great song. I think the real thing when the crack started the show was after we did the Bill Grundy show. That's where we swore on primetime TV, because then it became, prior to that, it was about us being in music magazines and getting a steady, you know, picking up fans. And but when that happened, when we were signed to EMI, and then we were filling in for Queen, who was meant to be on the show, they couldn't make it. We went on there to talk about our little tour that we were going to do, Anarchy in the UK tour. And then we did the swearing thing. The guy was provoking us. Anyway, we swore. It was the next day. It was just a front page tabloid all the way until we broke up, really. And I think I think that was the beginning of the end. Glenn didn't last much longer after the Grundy show. He just didn't seem that he wanted to go in 100%. I always got along with Glenn. It was just the dynamics. It just seemed a bit off. You know, he was always washing his feet, which we thought was odd. You know, he was always close to his mum and stuff. His mum was offended when we wrote Anarchy in the UK. And I think, you know, Malcolm had a bit to do with the manipulating of giving him the boot. Hence, you know, getting Sid in the band, who was John's friend. And I think John liked that, because now he's got his buddy in the band. He's got his buddy, you know. Obviously, well, it's not obvious, but Sid had never picked a bass up in his life before, which was a nightmare for me, because I'm the one telling him where to put his fingers, you know. But you couldn't deny he had a fantastic look, Sid, you know. And I think he would have gone on to be a real star. He had the potential. He just got slung in the deep end. I think, you know, there was a lot of friction in the Sex Pistols, but I think now looking back on it and knowing a lot of other bands, you got to have that chemistry, and that doesn't mean that you all like each other. You know, there is an invisible friction that people pick up on when they go to see a band, and it's important. It's definitely important. We only did one album, and that one album has kept the whole ball rolling ever since. You know, normally most bands who are, you know, these kind of bands, Doors, Beatles, Stones, Clash, they normally get about 4, 5, 6 albums under their belt. The fact that we only did one, I think, is a testament, you know. But maybe, you know, if we would have done another album, maybe it would have sucked.